you prefer not to coach. Is that a definite decision that you will not be coach here next year?
No, I mean, last night I wasn't prepared for that question, and so after, I think what's best in most of these questions about me or our organization or whatever would be to have a couple of weeks to separate from the season and take a look at the situation and make some better decisions or make some decisions 2 or 3 weeks from now. I know that I will be taking a look at the areas of responsibility that I have and going through the coaching staffs and just the different people that I'm responsible for and doing an analysis, and that'll be in the next, likely before June.
What are your priorities in the timeline that will unfold until late June?
Well, I haven't really started to work towards the management of the team between, normally the schedule starts to unroll from about the middle of May, say the 15th or 20th of May, when there's more teams eliminated than are participating. And between now and then, it would be to develop a plan. Which players do we want to, like just the UFAs, the players that need to be re-signed, looking at the possibility of trades. We'll have our meetings preparing for the draft. We have the combine in Toronto in late May. So they're mostly following the critical dates that are in place, taking us towards the draft at the end of June.
Bob, what were your own expectations for the Canadians this season? You said all along it was a goal to make the playoffs, but were the expectations of the media and fans unfair, or did you have the same expectations with the additions that you made this summer?
I think when I go back and look at September, I don't recall the date exactly that we made the trade for Robert Lang. And if I looked at that team on paper, we'd added Alex Tanguay and Robert Lang to supplement our offense. Felt that we could put back the offense that we would lose from Mark Strait. We projected a number of players to continue to progress and grow. And really through the first half of the season, we got most of that. We had a good record in the first half of the season, and it was the second half where we had the problems. And once they started to accumulate, then weren't able to carry through with what looked like on paper last September should be a team still competing in the playoffs today.
If it's your choice, do you want to be back as general manager?
I'm sitting here today with the idea that I still have work to do.
Is it become unbearable, or has it become unbearable to a certain degree, the media scrutiny, the attention, the pressure on this team? Has it become difficult sometimes to be able to move forward?
I mean, this isn't a great day to say there's not a lot of media pressure, but frankly, for me, it's overblown. I don't follow what most of you people do every day. I have no idea what you do. I guess some of you are good and some of you aren't so good because faces change out there too. But the people love the sport here, and in some ways that's a positive, and in some ways passion can be detrimental. It is what it is. It's a great place to play. The people care. It's a great team. It's got great traditions. And we get in and compete on an equal level with everyone else. And I think this is, why I don't feel this pressure or this, because I know that the guy in Nashville wants to win just as bad as we do, even though people here think Nashville's, who the hell would want to go there? Well, you know what? They like hockey there, and they play hockey there, and they play to win the same as we do. And we've got no entitlement to a place in the playoffs. We've got no right to a place in the playoffs. That's why we play for one, and that's why we put our goal there at the beginning of every year. The number of teams that spend close to the same amount of money to acquire players and put them on their team, the difference is minimal between 20 or 24 teams.
Do you think you need to change the core of the team, though? Now that you have 10 UFAs, from what you saw behind the bench, do you need to change the core of the team? Is that the way to move forward?
I think that's a question that I could answer at another time. This isn't a question about what we're going to do in June or July. These are questions about yesterday and the day before and what's happened in the 08-09 season.
Bob, a lot of fans, people I've talked to, including my own wife, have said, why do you continually stick by Carey Price? What is the, why does he keep putting Carey Price out there is the question I'm asked. Well, because everybody's saying, well, Halak, why not put him in? But what is there about Carey Price that you seem to be so ready to defend all the time?
Well, I think Carey Price is a thoroughbred. And your wife may not recognize it, but, I don't bake bread very well either. So, we each have our expertise. And Carey Price, I made a decision on Carey Price a year ago, which put him in position to gain experience. He got into a starting role at a very young age so that he could accelerate the number of games that he could play. He could accelerate the number of rich, experienced games that he could play in. And at 21 years old, I think he's doing pretty darn well. And besides that, I think he plays pretty good. He's a good goalie. And if I was playing against him, I would think, man, that's a good goalie. Look at him, the way he plays. That's why. Can you pass it on to your wife?
Bob, you talked about the expectations and the results on the ice. We put it all together, and the number of potential UFAs that you'll be dealing with. Does this make this the most challenging off-season that you will face in your role as GM here?
I don't know if it's more challenging or not. I mean, each year is we finish and we take what's in front of us and then we start to work with it. And this will be our fifth year, my fifth year in this new CBA environment. We're more comfortable with it. We understand it. We know that the cap might shift. We know what it means. And we have to compete with all the other teams. And, we have to be better. We want to be better. We don't want to be here in April next year. We'd like to be here in May. We'd like to be here in late May. So we have to be better. We have to do it better. And that'll be our objective in the next few weeks to start that process.
It appears that you did plan to arrive at this summer with this flexibility that you're talking about. However, the kind of the global issues that seem to be affecting what the cap will be next year, how much is that going to handcuff what you had hoped to accomplish this summer by having this flexibility?
Well, I think having the number of players as the UFAs likely is an optimum, but that's the way it unfolded. And our last meeting about whether to address certain players who had that status or would have that status was in January. And I continued along the same course that I had been since September, that there would be time, as there is starting today, where we have unique negotiating rights with all of those players. So I find it like a secondary, it was part of discussion at different times during the year, just as participation in the events around the centennial were part of the discussion. But I find those secondary disturbances, or possibly you could use them as excuses.
Responded about Brian Lawton about the issue with Tampa.
Yeah, well, I mean, the second half of our season was when things started to go off course, and I felt the first place was we had discussions with Tampa Bay. We had an agreement with them that I got a call early in January with a list of names from their team that they wanted to talk about. And those players ended up public because they used those names to take them to other teams to see if they could create a different trade for Vincent Lecavalier. And I think it was disgraceful that Josh Georges and Thomas Plekanec and Chris Higgins have to read that stuff. Secondly, we had injuries. We had injuries in the second half of the season. We had serious injuries to important players, and that affects your team over time.
What effect, if any, looking back, obviously, in 2020 hindsight, do you think having so many unrestricted and pending restricted free agents had on the group this year?
Well, I don't think it was ideal in the end. And a number of those players were veteran players who felt the pinch of being in that position. And then we added Matthew Snyder, who's also in that position late in the year. So it wasn't ideal, but it was what it was. And I really feel like that, along with a number of other things, were secondary distractions, perhaps excuses, that only came into play when we started to have bigger problems other places.